Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks, and this week, let's take a look at some cool guitars. So it may only be September, but in taking a quick look back through some of the videos that I've posted this year thus far, it dawned on me the other day that I've actually been very fortunate to tick quite a few guitars off my bucket list, at least in terms of guitars that I've always wanted to play. Of course, owning them or being able to afford them is a very different matter entirely in most of these cases, but in terms of guitars that I've always wanted to spend a little bit of time with or get to know in any capacity, it's been a very cool year so far, even more so considering I spent so much of it away or abroad with the band. Yes, this is a clip show, a dreaded clip show, but in case you couldn't tell from the sound of my voice, I've been struck down with a lurgy, or man flu, so my wife reckons, for the last few days and laid a little bit low, so plans for Friday Fretworks will have to wait until next week when I shall resume normal service. But in the meantime, I thought this would be a very cool opportunity to try and recap on some very, very cool guitars. Now first up, a 1958 Gibson Flying V. Now I delved into the specifics of this guitar and the Flying V in general only a few weeks ago actually when I made a video about this guitar, but suffice to say they don't really come much rarer than this. It's estimated that including known prototypes, only 100 Flying Vs were made between 1958 and 1959, making it easily one of the rarest production guitars ever made. Suffice to say you don't see many of them, especially here in the UK. Even more so, ones that have had their neck shaved down and their fretboard width narrowed from 42.8mm, the very common Gibson width, down to an incredibly skinny 40mm. Now thankfully its hardware and its electronics are still intact, so even if it wasn't the easiest guitar in the world to play, it sounded truly magnificent. Flying Vs really do have a voice and a character all their own. And this specific guitar is actually going to auction at Gardner Holgate here in the UK. I'll leave all the relevant links down in the description box on September 5th, so very soon. So if you've got pretty deep pockets and the urge to own a storied, shall we say, 1958 Gibson Flying V, this is probably your opportunity. Next up, we have a guitar that I'd actually shot a demo of for the shop not all that long ago. The shop being Vintage and Rare in Bath here in the UK, and the guitar, of course, being one that only a few weeks later was purchased by a good mate of mine, unceremoniously whipped out from under my feet, you could say. That friend, of course, being Slash, and the guitar being a 1960 59 spec Gibson Les Paul Standard, a burst by any other name, previously owned by John Thomas of Budgie fame. Of course, wishful thinking on my part in terms of being able to ever afford that guitar, but at the time of filming, Vintage and Rare actually had two bursts in stock. One referred to as Sunny, a single owner burst that had recently surfaced in South Africa, that I did a video on, plugged into a very early Marshall JTM 45, and the John Thomas burst, which I plugged into an equally spectacular sounding 1957 Fender Tweed Princeton, and amazingly it was that exact rig, the John Thomas burst and the Tweed Princeton, the Slash purchased only a few weeks later, funnily enough the day after Guns N' Roses had headlined Glastonbury. Now, there's not really much left to say about bursts that hasn't been said ad nauseum already, by myself as well, more than likely, so I'm not going to prattle on too much, but suffice to say this was a spectacular example of a 50s Gibson Les Paul Standard, not just in terms of its playability and sound, which were truly second to none, but in terms of its appearance and its top and its colour, which were about as close to my perfect vision of a burst as is humanly possible. So Slash, if you ever do want to part with this guitar, I'll ask my wife if we can sell the house. I'm sure we can both try and live in its case or something. In the meantime, though, this is how it sounds. Next up, we have a guitar which is pretty much solely responsible for my recent obsession with Jazzmasters. It's also the reason I'm pretty much having a replica of this guitar made at present, come to think of it. It's a 1963 Fender Jazzmaster, courtesy of Powerplay Studios in Mauer, Switzerland. First had a chance to play this guitar, I think in December of last year, when my band Cardinal Black shot and filmed a live session at the studio, and Cyril, the guitar's owner, was kind enough to bring it for me to play again at a festival that we've played recently in Zurich, which only served really to throw me head over heels in love with this guitar even further, if that was humanly possible. It's just a staggeringly cool, staggeringly good guitar. Whether or not that's because it's old and it looks battered and it's cool, or whether or not it is just because it's a very cool guitar, who knows? Who cares, honestly? It's just one of those guitars that can't help but inspire you. Really am a little bit in love with this guitar, and as such, if the sleepless nights are anything to go by, it's the reason I am having a replica of it built. Whether or not it'll live up to expectation, I guess, is another matter entirely, but honestly, it was worth a punt. It's such a cool guitar. last but not least, we have a spec or a type of guitar that I've wanted to play for many a year. It is, of course, a 1951 Fender Nocaster. This particular guitar was for sale at ATB Guitars here in Cheltenham in the UK, and as with anyone or anybody that's just celebrated its 72nd birthday, it has lived a life. This guitar, arguably more so than most, being pretty much the sole guitar of its owner, an incredibly high profile, incredibly prolific session player here in the UK, who over the years has played with anyone from Eric Clapton to Roger Daltrey, Iggy Pop, Bob Dylan, Tina Turner, Dire Straits, Pete Townsend, Bryan Adams, George Michael, Robbie Williams, Joan Armatrading, and the Pet Shop Boys, to literally name but a few. The guitar was also purchased for him by his uncle, Dave Davis, of course, of the Kinks. Why wouldn't it be purchased by Dave Davis? And as you can see by the name that had been previously taped onto the back of the guitar at some point, it also belonged to someone called Carl in its lifetime. I'll let you join the dots on that one, but suffice to say, no Carl, no Elvis Presley, and to quote Paul McCartney, certainly no Beatles. In regard to the guitar itself, not to lose sight of that, it was just a sensationally good Telecaster. It seemed to be second-guessing everything that I wanted to do and was there ready to deliver. It really is easy to see why it was not only his owner's main guitar, but pretty much his sole guitar for many a year. Honestly, in my mind at least, it lived up to every sentimental and romantic notion that I had, that one of the most pivotal, if not the most pivotal guitar in electric guitar history should be. It really was a joy to play. Going to play you out now, but as ever, thank you very much for watching and sticking with me through my cold this week. Please subscribe, hit the bell icon if you haven't already, and I shall see you next week, hopefully in better fettle, for another episode of Friday Fretworks. Cheers guys, take care, I'll see you soon.